This episode is brought to you by our friends at Better Man. Better Man is helping men everywhere have a clear biblical vision of manhood that changes everything. You can check them out at betterman.com. That is betterman.com.
Even as New Testament believers, it's so tempting to think about our sin in unrelational ways, as personal failure or as shortcomings. Like, oh, I'm just struggling with this sin. You know, we make it very individualistic. This is about me and my perfection and my problems, and I just need to get my act together so that whatever.
Kelly, before we get started, I just want to say, for those of our listeners who are just listeners and not watching, the outfit game today between the two of us, I just want to, a humble brag, but it's kind of on point. It's kind of,
what do you mean?
It's tasteful. It's kind of doing the clearly colors.
Oh,
it's a little bit, like
okay.
how complementative we are with each other. It's just working for me. Whatever this is, it's working.
People don't know how much you actually care about outfits.
I just care,
It is true.
I just care.
You pack
Some men
more
care
than
about
me.
the Dallas Cowboys. I care that the fit looks right.
Yes.
And
you pack larger bags than I do when we travel because you need your options.
You have to have, guys. I'm not just gonna roll up to a Kroger looking shaggy. You got to come in looking.
That's the place you pick.
Because you never know. You just never know when you're gonna have that chance encounter. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
That sounded
I hope you don't have any
romantic
chance
and I meant
encounters
none of that.
at Kroger.
Yeah.
On that note,
that's where I meet all of.
Why don't you get our wheel?
Yeah. Wow. Let's get out of that ditch. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 5, maybe. I don't know what this is.
5.
Of Clearly
Yes.
Cold Turkey. And we are spinning the wheel. We're discovering with you. If you just joined us, we're discovering with you what passage we're doing on this episode, so that you can learn with us what the passage is about, and maybe even more importantly than that, discover how to mine a text and get the most out of it. So we are hoping this is helpful, but we will discover in one spin if it's going to be helpful or not. Shall we? Because it might be miserable.
You can't do that.
That's the spin. 23.
All right.
Here we go. 23 McGee. Card. I predict it's going to be 2 Maccabees. That was a joke. A little Catholic joke. All you apocryphal people out there. I'm just kidding. That's not in the Bible.
Why do you have your Logos pulled up? That's cheating.
It's not cheating. It's not cheating. I am ready. I'm ready. Just like I would be if I was seeing this for the first time. And here it is.
What is
it?
it?
It is. The text is Hosea 1.
Oh, wow.
Hosea chapter 1, my friends. Why? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Like you're nervous? Oh, wow. Like...
No, I was just thinking about what's in Hosea 1. It would be interesting.
There's some words. Some words you shouldn't call your friends in Hosea 1. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay. So can we go there?
You know what? I'm super glad that we're doing this today together, because I think this would be a less good episode today if it was just me, because you and Hosea, you've got a close relationship.
I love the book of Hosea.
Why? Tell me why you love all the choice words in it. You like that it kind of allows you to cuss without cussing. Is that kind of like one of your things? No,
I don't know exactly what words you're thinking about, but no, it's a lot. It's a very the prophets. I love the prophets because you hear so much of the heart of God in it, and a lot of it is the pain in God's heart.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to know the emotional life of our God, I think the prophets are a great place to start. And Hosea feels particularly emotional, and is very much about God's desire for his people to know him and his grief that they do not.
The word of the Lord, which came to Hosea, the son of Beeri? Fail.
I don't know.
During the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and during the days of Jeroboam, the son of Joash, king of Israel. When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go, Take yourself a wife of harlotry and have children of harlotry, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. And the Lord said to him, name him Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel. On that day, I will break the bow of Israel in the valley of Jezreel. Then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And the Lord said to him, name her Lo-Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive them. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and deliver them by the Lord their God, and will not deliver them by bow, sword, battle, horses, or horsemen. Then she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah. She conceived and gave birth to a son. So this is child 3. And the Lord said, name him Lo-Ammi, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. And the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together, and they will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up from the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. Mm-hmm. Woo! One of the things we're hoping for in this season of Clearly is to have a good spread of Bible literature for you, because if you didn't know this, the Bible is all different kinds of literature coming together. So we've already tackled stuff in like the epistolary genre, which just means letters, just a smart religious word for letters. We've tackled, have we done narrative already? We did some narrative with Numbers 25. That was fun. Little spear action with our man Phineas. We did the law. We did Leviticus 15, some other stuff. And here we are in Hosea, and Hosea is in the prophets, which makes it, wait for it, prophetic literature. Do you see what we did there?
Wow.
And so we're in a new genre, and we're in the beginning of this story. And Kelly, help me out, because my goodness, there's so many things that if you're a first-time reader, or if you're like 90% of Earth and you avoid the prophets, there's some hurdles to overcome. What are the hurdles? Like what help me. Well, help me help you, help me help them.
Well, first of all, that verse 1 gives us so much context of time. It mentions the words that God spoke through Hosea in a particular time. And so really, if you think about the prophets, I mean, what they are, one way to think about it, this is not an exact comparison, but they're like sermons that are happening in the historical time period of Israel and Judah. So if you don't have familiarity with what's happening in Israel or Judah at that time, which if you hear me using those two names, that's even something else you might not know about. Israel was a divided kingdom for a long period of time. Yeah. Israel in the north, Judah in the south. And if you don't know much of that historical context, which mainly happens in 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, then what you're reading are sermons, sort of, that the Lord is speaking through his prophets to his people in that time. And you have no context. You know, you read this and God's opening statement is, go take for yourself a wife of harlotry, because that's what you guys are like to me. You've forsaken me. Or other translations use whoredom. I think the ESV uses take a wife of whoredom. Earmuffs. Because the land my people have committed whoredom, or the CSB uses promiscuity. And you
What's the message used? Are we even allowed to say what the message says? I don't know.
My point is, it's not like a really comfy, cozy opening line from God. And if we read it in isolation, we're like, whoa, wait a minute. God, that's not very kind of you to say to your people. I feel uncomfortable with this. But you're also reading out of context. You don't know what's happening in this time period of the people of Israel. If you would read it first, which would be probably the ideal way to read the prophetic books, is knowing some of the history. It would make a lot more sense.
That's a great point. And we're going to say this repeatedly throughout the season, but context is king. We have to, you will get so much more out of a text if you set it in its context and the surrounding setting that it belongs in. Now, let me say this. It is possible for anybody to drop into any point in the Bible and get something meaningful out of it without you knowing 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Because every text, even in isolation, is disclosing something about the character of God, the nature of God. So if you know nothing about any Bible history, you could come to Hosea and you could glean some things about God, right? So and all you have to do that is you come with the question, God, what does that verse tell me about what you prefer, what you like, what you hate, right? So you can learn things. But Kelly, you're so right. Like, this is a historical document set in a time period. So when you drop into Hosea and you read names like Jotham and Uzziah and Ahaz and Hezekiah, don't sleep on those names. Don't just skip on past them. This is a chance for you to do that great work of cross-referencing. Your Bible, almost assuredly, has letters that are attached to verses in the margin. Always go there. You will orient yourself so much better to what the heck is going on.
Right. Which I was just looking at some notes I have in my Bible, because when I read those kings' names, I'm not like, I exactly know. I know everything that's going on there, even though I've read those books thoroughly.
Yep.
But just one little peek, I was looking at my note on Ahaz, King Ahaz. My note about him is he did evil, like the Israelite king, sacrificing his son to idols. And he brought a bunch of foreign altars to Jerusalem. So it's like, it's not a great period. There are some great moments, but anyway, I think what's hard about this is this opening statement from God in this book is, I want you to go, Hosea. He actually is commanding his prophet Hosea to go marry a prostitute, it really, we don't know. To marry a woman of harlotry might mean she is not yet, but she is prone to that, or she will eventually become that. We're not sure, but either way, what a painful thing. Can we just pause there and go, a man of God, a godly man, his God looked at him and said, will you please choose a life of pain and betrayal? Will you please do that? Could you imagine if God said that to you? I mean, it's like, Lord, I'm your servant, your bondslave, whatever, like Mary says that in Luke, whatever your will is, let it be done unto me. And here, Hosea, this is a very painful thing. And God asks his prophet to do that because he's saying, this is what my life is like. Because my people commit, this one says flagrant harlotry or blatant acts of promiscuity in the CSB against me. And so it immediately, one, it's very pain-ridden. It's a pain-ridden book for Hosea, but also for our God. I think what to me is screaming out of that is our sin against God is very personal. It's very, as personal as you would take it if your spouse cheated on you.
Yeah.
And you found out they'd slept with someone else. And not only that, not just once or twice, but several times, how would you feel? How personal would you take it? God is saying, that's how personal I take the sin of my people.
And you're bringing up such a good point, because one of the things Hosea is doing is it's opening us up to the emotional life of God. And this is good for us to remember that God has an emotional life. There is a theological reality called the impassibility of God, which means God is not, he's not prone to flying off the handle. He's in control of his emotional life, right? He's never like sadness never happens to him. He doesn't wake up one morning feeling bummed. Like he's in control of his emotion. But his impassibility does not mean he is not emotional. And I think Hosea is a great testament to it. I mean, you don't make an analogy about harlotry and then marrying a harlot and saying this is what it's like to, for me to be with you guys, if you're not saying my heart's torn up. Can God's heart be torn up over sin? Like, can he actually be grieved about a thing? Yes, he can. Yeah. He's not a stoic, robotic rule giver. He feels things. And I think that's one of the powerful things that comes across in Hosea. This episode of Clearly is brought to you by our friends at Better Man. Better Man is about unleashing a better masculinity and manhood. It's one that's rooted in God's timeless word. Imagine that. A free resource for churches and men's groups and fathers, brothers, husbands. Better Man is a deep dive into what it means to be a real man. Here's the deal. Too many men today are lost and they're walking around in a masculinity fog. And Better Man is the clarity and conviction you need to be the man God has called you to be. So check them out at betterman.com. That's betterman.com.
It's easy and tempting to read this passage with just kind of like a little defensiveness, or like, I don't like this about God. He literally is going to say, name all your children these terrible things,
You think anyone's done it? You think anyone's been like, oh, this
Jezreel,
is a Bible.
God will
honey,
punish.
It's a Bible name. Lo Ami. Let's go with that one.
Right. What does that one mean again? What is that?
That means you are not my people.
Right.
Just warms the heart, doesn't it?
God no longer has compassion on Israel. Lo Ruhamah. Jezreel, God will punish. So it's like, it can be really tempting to read this and just really want to scoot past it really fast and go, let me get to the really lovely parts of this book, because there are some. There's some great coffee mug verses in the book of Hosea, but this isn't one of them. But that happens in us. That temptation to do that happens because we're reading looking for ourselves primarily. We're looking for, what does this say about me? What does this do to comfort me? But if we come to the Bible with an interest in God, who we already love and treasure because he's died for, like as New Testament believers, we know he has paid for our sin at the cross. Let me know him. I want to understand him. I want to know what makes him angry and sad. I want to know what makes him joyful. When I come that way, then this chapter immediately becomes something I'm very interested in, because God is speaking about his emotional life to me and things that are hurtful to him. And it's really big words. And it's kind of an opening chapter in this book. And so it sets the tone for what the rest of it is going to be. And the rest of this book is full with just the grief of God for his people. I mean, this was one of the first books I got to teach to our women at our church. Mm-hmm. And so some of these verses just really stick out to me. But there's later in the book, he'll say, if I were to write my law by the 10,000s, my people wouldn't recognize one of them. Just, you wouldn't even recognize my word if it was written
hit you in
for
the face.
you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know it. And you know what is true in some of this time period? Around this time, I think maybe shortly after, King Josiah comes onto the throne and they find the book of the law. Yeah. It's been lost for generations. It's like no one literally has known God's word because no one took the time to care to preserve it. Yeah. So it really is like, you don't even know me. You don't know my word. And yet, near the end of the book, his heart is still overflowing with compassion for his people. You see it, even hear a little hint of it at the end, that the end of this chapter, that even though he's saying, name your 3 children, these terrible names to represent, like right now, you're not my people, but eventually you will be. There's a little bit of hope that is breaking in near the end of this chapter.
Well, and that's where I want to get to, because I do think that is, for me, what makes chapter 1 so jarring is this pivot that happens. When you're studying a text, one of the things that sort of makes the type of word that makes a text turn corners is typically those connecting conjunctive-like words. So when you see buts or ands or ors or yets, those are great things to box as you're going, because those are sort of the hinges on which the door of God's word turns. So I always try to file that away when I'm reading a thing. What but means or what yet means is I've just said a thing and I've been going in this direction, but now we're taking a left turn, and so that's signaling to the reader, oh, okay, I got to pay attention to this. Whatever's coming on the other side of this is going to be important, and you get a big one of those in verse 10. He's just ripped up Israel, talking about what their sin feels like to him. Name your kids these things, these awful things, because I'm not going to have compassion on my people. In fact, he says in verse 6, I don't know how much bigger you can say it. Name her Lo Ruhamah, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel. It's so definitive, isn't it? It's so like that. Well, that's it. We had a good run, Israel. That's it. You are not my people anymore. I am not your God. Verse 9. I mean, that's as big as it gets. And then verse 10 hits, and it starts with yet. I just put like big like star marks all around this word yet. Because to me, it's like, well, that's I need to know what's on the other side of yet. And then you turn that corner on verse 10 with that word yet. And again, I'll just read it again, but just listen to this language. All that stuff you just heard, not my people, no compassion. I am no longer your God. That's it. Yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. You know what that is? That is the writer taking us all the way back to the language of Abraham, right? Where God makes promises to Abraham that, hey, I'm going to give you land, I'm going to give you blessing, and I'm going to give you a people, and they're going to outnumber the stars of the sky. They're going to outnumber the sand of the sea. He's taking them all the way back to Abraham. He's saying, hey, turns out though, I still keep my promises. So I know I said those things, but you know, it's like a heartbroken lover almost. It's like, I said these things, but I just got such a soft spot.
I know.
You know, I love my people, but it's weird because God's impassible, but
right. Which define that word impassible again.
So it has to do with the emotional life of God, and it's not that God doesn't or can't feel emotions, but it's that the emotional life of God is utterly controlled by the other aspects of God. He never flies off the handle.
Right.
He's though he actually feels things and feels them profoundly, he's always utterly in control of them and deliberately chooses to feel them. So if he,
that's helpful. Well, I was curious about your definition of that again, but it is helpful to see this, these strong emotions from God, yet that feeling of like, how did you put it? It was so great what you just said. I can't
run it back, editor. Just play it again. Though he actually feels things and feels them profoundly, he's always utterly in control of them and deliberately chooses to feel them.
Just that he can't help himself, but to have compassion, you know? And I think it, to me,
he has a soft spot. Yeah,
he has a soft spot for his people. I think it doesn't, the word I'm looking for is maybe humanizes, but that's not exactly what I mean. I think we're so prone to think of God as a system, as a impersonal force or thing. Maybe we don't think about Jesus that way. Our God is 3 in 1. So Jesus is God, but God the Father, who is mostly active in that we see in the Old Testament. We tend to think of God as like, I don't know, impersonal, distant, far away, systematic. You broke my law, then this happens. ABC, very formulaic. And this type of emotional literature that does have some of that back and forth feel of like, no, you've offended me, but I can't give you up, you know, just reminds me that he is a person, a being. That's right. What comes to mind even as you're talking is one of my favorite passages in the Bible is in Hosea. It's Hosea chapter 11, where God is speaking to his people and saying, you are like my children. I raised you. I taught you to walk. Like the language is very motherly. I took them up in my arms and I sat them on my lap. Like it's got language like that. And then says, but yet they were bent on turning away from me, even though that was who I was to them. They just couldn't take going away from me. And so then this language from God, he essentially says, well, how can I give you up? How could I surrender you? How can I even do that? My heart is turned over within me and all my compassions are kindled. Beautiful. And then he says, I will not execute my fierce anger and I will not destroy Ephraim, which is another name for Israel. Again, for I am God and not man, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath. I mean, it's just beautiful. I'm so offended and hurt, but how can I give you up?
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
My heart is overflowing with compassion to you. But just because he is a God of compassion does not mean he is not like a betrayed lover in the sense that when we have sinned against him, it's not like he just waves that off and goes, no worries. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not okay.
Yeah. And yet to say I'm God and not man, therefore I won't come in wrath.
Yeah.
That's so curious because I think the average person thinks
the
God,
opposite.
that I'm God and not man, so I'm going to smoke y'all.
Right. As if we're the compassionate people.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But what God's doing is rightly saying, hey, you guys, when you get hot, you stay hot forever. Mm-hmm. You can't ever overlook it. You can't. And I'm telling you, I'm not like that.
That's right.
Like I have, my character is not like your character. Mm-hmm. But it still begs a question, doesn't it? Because God does extend pardon, and he does do these things to his people, and it's actually a massive tension. If you are thoughtful about the compassion God extends to sinners, you'll actually start being a little troubled by it, because God, if he's a good judge, he can't just overlook a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, so did Israel really do these terrible things to, read chapter 1. Israel did terrible things to God, against God. This is horrible stuff. Right. And is it right for God to just go, but one day I'm just going to love you like crazy. My compassion's going to come back, and you are going to be my sons and daughters. It's like a thoughtful person should go, no, that's not okay.
That's not right. Mm-hmm.
And that's actually the problem that the New Testament is solving. Mm-hmm. Can I go there real quick, or did you want to say something?
As long as we can come back and I can say one more thing.
Oh, come back and say one more thing. I just want to point out that this is a tension that I'm going to Romans 3, because this is a tension that the book of Romans is helping us reconcile and make sense of, because God's righteousness has been blighted. His name needs to be vindicated. And yet he's got this impulse to have compassion. How can he be both? How can he be both a good judge, right? How can he be just and justify ungodly people, like pass over sins? How can he do that? The answer is Romans 3. Listen to this. So Jesus Christ, whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation, or a wrath absorber, in his blood through faith. This was to demonstrate, so Jesus dying was to demonstrate God's righteousness, because in the forbearance of God, he passed over the sins previously committed. So all the stuff we're reading about in Hosea, God passed over those sins previously committed for the demonstration, I say, of his righteousness at the present time, meaning now Jesus coming and dying, so that he would be just and the justifier of one who has faith in Jesus. Here's what that means. Jesus dying on the cross is not, the leading edge of it is not actually primarily about God's love. It's actually about God's justice. God, with an impulse to love sinful people like the people he's talking about in Hosea, for him to love them, to justify them, bring them into his family, he's got to deal with their crimes. But how do you deal with their crimes without making them deal with their crimes? The answer is you absorb their crimes in the person of Christ. Jesus takes on our crimes on the cross, and now all of a sudden, in this mysterious, who would have ever thought about it way, God simultaneously in one moment becomes just. I'm a good judge. I've paid the debt for your sins that I passed over, because Jesus has died for them. And he's the justifier of sinful people, because everybody who trusts in Jesus, their sins get paid for vicariously. It's a plan nobody could ever thought of except him. It's the most beautiful thing ever. But it's the only way that Hosea actually ends up making sense.
Well, and that's how we should read it as New Testament believers. As we read that passage, how can I give you up? All my compassions are kindled. I am God and not man. I will not come in wrath. We should read that and go, oh, he's sending Jesus.
Yeah.
I will not come in wrath. How will he come to us? As a baby. What? To be a sacrifice for sin? That's like why he's God and not man, because none of us would do that. If our spouse commits adultery against us, multiple times, innumerable times, we're not like, you know what? I have a plan.
Yeah. I would love to humble myself.
I would love to humble myself and die for you.
Yeah.
How about that? None of us would do that.
Yeah.
None of us would do that. And that's what God pictures himself as.
Yeah.
So it is shocking. It really is shocking. And I think it's that relational aspect, to come back to Hosea, that I think is so beautiful about this opening chapter in Hosea, because even as New Testament believers, it's so tempting to think about our sin in unrelational ways, as personal failure or as shortcomings. Like, oh, I'm just struggling with this sin. We make it very individualistic. This is about me and my perfection and my problems, and I just need to get my act together so that whatever. But as soon as I think about my sin as personally and very poignantly offensive to my God who I love, that it is like cheating on him.
Yeah.
That is the language he uses. That might sound like harsh, like why would we want to think about that? I find it to be actually really healthily motivating, because it immediately now, when I see my sin that way, when I see my pride that way, when I see my quickness to anger with my kids or my unforgiveness or whatever, fill in the blank, as God looking at me going, that hurts. That hurts. It's like, oh man, now I have a motivation to change and to ask him for help to change. That's about love for him, not about me performing, getting better, my perfection. And I think that's what it should be. It should be motivated by that. And so I think this type of language in the prophets is so it's so helpful to me. And it keeps my walk and my fight for righteousness and holiness very relational, connected to love for God and my relationship with him, knowing that he first came and died for me. So it's all been paid, right? There's no condemnation anymore. But yet, I should take my sin this seriously, because this is how God sees it. We hope you enjoyed this conversation around Hosea 1, and I personally hope you'll read the entire book of Hosea, because it's a personal fave.
Read it right now while you're driving.
Please don't.
If you enjoyed this episode, we would love for you to share it with a friend or an enemy. Share it with an enemy. Nobody's doing that these days. You could subscribe to the podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, do that whole thing. Also, we have an email list that we would love to get you the first bits of information of stuff that's coming, new stuff we're creating. So you can join that email list by clicking on the link below in the show notes. And last but not least, we would love for you to be a partner with us. If you like the things that we're doing, the work that we're doing in this podcast and more, for just as little as $5 a month, you can become a partner with us to help make that a reality. So we would love for you to do that. Again, down in the show notes, you can click there to become a partner. We love you guys, and we will see you next Tuesday.
See you next time.